Welcome, Michelle Lee. It's our honor to have you on our 32 Most Influential podcast. Michelle Lee was named OSAP's Executive Director in July 2018. Michelle came to OSAP with more than 30 years of experience successfully leading organizations and corporations with real-world business acumen and executive skill sets in dental, medical, and other related healthcare industries. Prior to OSAP, Michelle worked at DDS Staffing Resources, Inc., beginning as a recruiter in 1988 before being promoted to vice president in 1991. In 2007, Michelle purchased the firm, serving as president and CEO until successfully selling and merging the business with Avery Partners in 2012. She remained with Avery Partners as president of the staffing division until 2017. Michelle also provided leadership and team development training to dental and healthcare professionals throughout her career. She studied the field of behavioral profiling for more than 25 years and has made numerous presentations on behavioral profiling and communication, customer service, goal setting, as well as interviewing and hiring techniques to healthcare associations throughout the Southeast. Michelle is passionate about OSAP's mission to be the leading provider of infection prevention and control education, training, and credentialing that supports safe dental visits. Michelle, thanks so much once again for taking this hour with us, and we really look forward to what we can learn together. First of all, where does this podcast find you? Where are you today?
Wow, I'm working in my home office, like everybody else. We haven't quite gone back into the brick and mortar building. OSAP is headquartered in Atlanta. Which has been perfect for me because I grew up in Georgia, and so I didn't have to relocate for this position. Thank goodness.
That's great. And are you? How is it in the Lee household? Are you? How are you handling the COVID crisis, and how has it been?
We're managing. I have to say, this has been, I think it's a good test for any married couple. After we've been married 31 years, and we didn't kill each other in this house for the past 6 months. But my husband's teaches physics in a local high school, and so he was, of course, working remotely in the spring, and he is back in his classroom now. So I'm actually have some alone time. His kids aren't back yet, but he's in the classroom teaching virtually. So,
very cool.
But everything's been great here. Yeah.
Very cool. And where did you grow up? You say you grew up in Georgia?
In Georgia, yeah. Grew up in Columbus, Georgia, which is a couple hours south of Atlanta.
Are you how many siblings? And
I have a brother. I have two stepsisters and one stepbrother.
Fantastic. Great. I'd like to get into your background and really learn about what you wanted to be when you grew up, and also what you studied in college, because not everybody that makes it into the dental business just gets there coincidentally. So, I mean, I got in because of my father, and I was always planning. I mean, I have dental in my blood, so I'm always very interested to hear how people get into our space.
Yeah, I never was a dream to be in dentistry. Isn't that funny? But when I was 15, I decided that I wanted to be a newspaper reporter. And so in the high school, paper, and then went to college, majored in journalism, and never changed my major. I was always focused on print journalism. And when I graduated from college, I really couldn't survive on what newspapers wanted to pay me at the time. That was really, I had college loans.
I think it's even worse today.
Right? And it's like, yeah, it is much worse today. Yeah. But this dates me. So I answered an ad in the Atlanta paper that a 2-line ad, back when you would put classified ads in newspapers, for this position. And it simply said interviewing skills needed. And I thought, oh, well, I can interview anybody. I'm a reporter. I'm a journalist. And it was for a dental staffing firm. And I went in and sold myself. I was this big risk. The founder of the company will still tell you today it was the riskiest hire she ever made because I had no dental background.
And you were just out of college.
I was just out of college. Yeah. And so she threw me into some evening classes, dental assisting classes. I learned how to make temporary crowns. I never made another one. But I learned dental terminology. And, the rest is history. I fell in love with this industry. I think dentistry is, it's one big family. And as the business grew, we expanded into medical staffing, which was much larger than the dental staffing business. I actually started up that division for the company. But my love was always in the dental market. And so eventually, I did purchase the company from the founder, and I just love it.
And so, kind of a funny thing. You were looking for a job. It happened to have been dental, and all of a sudden, here's the rest of your life.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
So cool. So you began working for the dental staffing company, and then, but you had some promotions along the way, and then you bought it from the owner. Can you tell us a little bit about how that worked? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she was ready to retire, and I'd been groomed for a number of years that was what I wanted. And that's what I wanted to do. And I did purchase the company with a partner, someone who had been in the business with me in the past. And so we bought the company in 2007, right before the Great Recession. Oh. And and so it was I learned a lot during those 5 years that we owned the company, because it was some of the toughest years in my business. That was my third recession, but it was different, as we all know, than any recent recession that we had had. And dental offices really hurt during those times. But we made it. 60% of staffing firms went out of business in the country during that time, but we made it. So we were very proud of that. And then we had the opportunity to merge with a larger staffing company. And there were just so many great benefits to make that move.
There's an NYU professor named Scott Galloway who says that always the best investments he's made have been during recessions. The businesses that he's a big startup investor, and the ones that have had the most success for him have been the ones that started around the 2000 and 2001 dot-com crisis, or the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009. And the reason for that, he says, is because that's when competitors go out of business, and you can take their business, and also it's easy to get good associates at that time. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that you've had a great success in business and you took over in 2007. You probably had a couple of scary years, but then
yes,
really some great times. So that's great. Do you have any interesting stories from the dental staffing business? We've got a lot of dental people listening to this podcast, and I'm sure you have a story or two.
Oh my gosh. The temporary staffing business is a crazy business. The hours that you work, and throughout my entire almost 30 years in that business, I always said there's got to be an easier way to make money, because we would put in so many hours, because we would have, dental offices call us at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and their dental hygienist was sick. And could we get somebody there by 8 o'clock? And you felt their pain, and you just wanted to be there, because if they didn't have that dental hygienist, then patients had to be canceled. And you know how difficult that is when, especially in a successful practice, it can take 6 months to get back in if your appointment's canceled. So we worked really hard, but you're dealing with people, and as our screening techniques were amazing. And, we did background checks on people. We would check the references. You do all of that. And people are people. And they're human. And I do remember, I'll never forget this one. This one happened many years ago, probably in the early 90s. But I had a working interview scheduled for someone. So, this was a chance for her to go in and prove herself. And she calls at 7 a.m. and says, I can't come in. My grandmother has passed away. And let me just tell you, people have lots of grandmothers that pass away. But she called and said, my grandmother's passed away. I'm in Savannah, and I'm not going to be able to make the working interview. Understood, no problem. I'm really sorry for your loss. And so as soon as the office opened, I called and rescheduled that working interview for her. And the office was very understanding. And I called back around, I called her house. It was around 10 o'clock, and to leave a voicemail message. And of course, this is pre-cell phone where everybody had a cell phone. And she answered the phone. And I recognized her voice immediately. And I said, I thought you were in Savannah. And you have to understand, Savannah's like a 4 to 5 hour drive from Atlanta. Sure. And she said, oh, yeah. Well, we decided that my grandmother was so ugly, we're not having a funeral for her. And I came on. And number one, who can say that about any grandmother?
I don't know whether to laugh or cry.
Real, right? But it's one of those things. And I just said to her, I don't think this is truth or whatever. And, I never heard from her again, of course.
My goodness.
But, you have those kind of stories that you just can't make up.
That's great.
But then you have those amazing stories where it's one of my favorite meetings, because it's based here in Atlanta, of course, is the Hinman Dental meeting, which I've gone to this is the first year I've ever missed it because of course, it was canceled because of COVID. And, but to go to those meetings and you see people that you placed 20 years ago, and they come up and they hug you and they thank you, and they're so appreciative. And the doctors thank you for the staff that you've placed in their office. And that's where the reward was always there. And that's why I hung in there for so many years, because I loved it.
That is so cool. That is so cool. So you sell the business, and then you are, I would imagine, looking for something to do. And then how did you learn about the OSAP opportunity?
Well, I got a phone call from, I'm a big networker, and I really wasn't looking at that particular moment. I was doing consulting. I was working with a dental practice management company, doing some leadership training and team development in dental practices, and having a blast. I just loved doing it. And then got this call, and actually I got a call initially asking if I knew anyone because of my recruitment background. And then a few months later, they called me back and said, why aren't you interested? And I thought, well, I'm not an executive director. I've not done that, but why would I be? And the more I talked to them, the more I realized this was such a great role for me. And I knew about OSAP. I knew about OSAP I think the first time I learned about OSAP was in 1990. So our staffing firm, when OSHA first required that all dental professionals have a yearly bloodborne pathogen training for OSHA, our company would do that training for our clients. Mm-hmm. So I hired a woman named Jackie Dorst, who's still a very active member of OSAP, to do the training, and she was a member of OSAP. So I remember having to introduce her, and this name, the Organization for Safety, Asepsis, and Prevention, I just thought, what a lot of words to have to introduce with somebody. And that's why it always stuck with me. And so really, when I did get the call, she was the first person I called to say, hey, tell me about this association. What do you think? And I thought she was going to come through the phone. She was so excited. And she said, oh, you have to do this. And I went through, I think, 5 interviews
Wow.
for the job, but it was the perfect fit.
That is so cool. Can you tell us, there may be people in the audience that don't know that much about OSAP. Tell us about OSAP and why it was founded, when it was founded, and the role that it plays.
So OSAP is an international dental association. So we have members, and our focus is solely on infection prevention and patient safety. Bottom line. And we're the only dental association that is our sole focus. Of course, every dental association has a piece of that, at their annual conferences and their trainings, but this is who we are. The association started in the 80s, early 80s, 84. And it was...
I just want to interrupt you for 1 second. Yeah. I'm learning something big about OSAP, which I didn't realize. I always thought of it as an American organization. Is it international?
It's international. We have members from all over the world. Yes.
Are there competing I don't want to get ahead of us too much, but my mind is, I don't want to forget this question. Do other countries have their version of OSAP, or is OSAP the only one?
It's the only one that I know of. Yes.
So by default, OSAP is the international source of information for dental safety.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Most of our focus, of course, is on the U.S. standards. I was just recently, September is Dental Infection Control Awareness Month, and I was recently on a call with our Brazilian members because they were celebrating this month in their country. They called it, hope I say it correctly, Set Bio. And that is their version of Dental Infection Control Awareness Month. And each country has some differences in their guidance. But yeah, we have people attend our conferences from all over the world. In January at our annual boot camp that we had in Chicago this year, we had over 700 people, or right at 700 people there. We had people from 28 countries and 48 states attend.
Like so many things, I mean, I would assume that the traffic light was invented in America, and then the other countries copy, right? And which is one of the so many reasons to be proud of America, but this is just yet another one where we kind of set the tempo for the dance of infection control, and experts in most other nations are all looking to see what we're doing. And so that's
another example that happened this year before COVID really started. Back in the fall, we were approached by a group from Pakistan wanting OSAP subject matter experts to come over to do some training for their dental practices because they have huge issues. There's no regulations in Pakistan for dental infection control.
I've been to Pakistan. I know. It's in fact, there's a lot of dentistry done right on the street in Pakistan.
Yes, and it's one reason they have such a problem with hepatitis C there. And so we were not, of course, able to go in July as planned, but we have done 2 webinars for Pakistan. So we do have that reach.
These webinars are changing everything. And I think that the webinars that OSAP can make for the future really can OSAP is already the international standard for dental safety, but these webinars can really solidify the position. I mean,
absolutely. Yes.
So great. Yep.
Yeah.
So, but I did interrupt you, and I was asking about the, what OSAP is, what it does, and kind of what excites you about the organization. What excited you then? And then, and I want to talk pre-COVID, because I think COVID really changed everything again for OSAP. So I believe it was founded around time of AIDS.
Yes, that's a reason it started, was because it was actually Peggy and Jim Cottrell, who owned at the time
Cottrell.
Yes, Cottrell. Yes. And they were in dentistry, and they were coming back. Apparently they had been to, I think the story is, I hope I have this right. They'd been to Africa, and they were on a plane coming back, and they realized we needed an association to focus on infection control, because they realized then that AIDS was just a plane ride away, right, to the US.
Sure.
And so that's when we had the first big change in infection control. And OSAP was really behind all of that. I mean, if you remember in the 80s, a lot of dentists didn't wear gloves. I remember that. So, that changed. And over the years, OSAP just worked to get this message out there to help with infection control. And we worked really closely with the CDC and the Division of Oral Health to help them with the guidance and to get those messages across. And we have OSAP leadership, subject matter experts who were helped to author the 2003 guidelines, the 2016 summary. So OSAP has been very involved in all of this for years, but I think for a long time, it was more of a guild, even just a very, very specialized, and people who just had this passion and this fire in them to really get this message out there. OSAP was led by an amazing woman, executive director for 24 years, Therese Long. And she retired. And when she retired, they made the decision to retire. That's when OSAP decided they would engage with an association management company. And so that's kind of what brought OSAP to Atlanta, because we work with an association management company called Meeting Expectations. And what I will say, when you look back, it's amazing how all of these pieces have come together. But the OSAP leadership, when the things were changing, and because Therese, again, an amazing woman, but she had a very small staff, just very part-time, and really relied just on volunteers. And I don't know how the woman ever slept with what she accomplished. And she is on my speed dial, by the way. She's still working with me as a consultant. I will never let her go away. But so when they were going through that transition, the board realized we need to reinvest in the association so that we can grow this more. And they made the decision to expand staff. And with working with an association management company, we had even more resources at our fingertips. So I have an amazing team now. I have a full-time director of education, which OSAP's never had. I have an association coordinator. I have a full-time marketing coordinator, but I also have access to an entire creative and marketing department. So we can put together these great webinars and information to share that we were never able to do before. There's just so many hours in the day. And the fact that when I started with OSAP 2 years ago, having this director of education allowed me to truly get out and network. Until March, I was traveling pretty much 60 to 70% of the time, going to every national dental meeting out there to bring the OSAP message out to more people. And that was kind of what my vision has been, is to collaborate more, to get that message out there more. I'm a salesperson at heart. What can I say? And then I had this amazing woman, Ashley McDermott, as our director of education. She's got her master's in public health. She came to me from another medical association, and she has been able to really help develop our annual conference and our boot camp, and really focus on those things while we get the messages across. So our OSAP board, if they had not done what they did a couple of years ago, when COVID hit, we couldn't do what we're doing now. We wouldn't have had the infrastructure. And I wouldn't have been able to get out there and travel and network like I did, so that when everything happened in dentistry and people were saying, what should we do? How are we going to practice safely during a pandemic? I was able to connect with all the national associations and bring our subject matter experts to them to provide the training they needed. And that's the magic behind all of this and why it's worked. I mean, it's just incredible how everything fell into place.
And when I would argue that prior to COVID, most dental people couldn't spell OSAP or even know, really hardly.
I would be at the Chicago Midwinter or
Sure.
Daily Dental Meeting. People would come up and say, "So does your company send OSHA trainers into my office?" And I'm like, "Well, we're not a company."
They didn't get it. But really, at that time, OSAP was doing some really important work. Let's not forget. Water lines, handpiece setback, instrument processing, designing the dental office of the future, sharp safety, x-ray safety. These are all the things OSAP was very busy with pre-COVID. But as you said, the organization set itself, the timing was perfect in, working with an outside association and hiring you and hiring Ashley, who's amazing, by the way. And she really is. And setting OSAP up for you weren't maybe even sure why. And then all of a sudden, because it was the right thing to do, and then all of a sudden COVID hits and the spotlights from all over the world are all of a sudden on OSAP. And
my phone, those first 3 months, I'm telling you, my phone rang 7 days a week with people looking for subject matter experts to do a webinar. So, we worked with companies like your company,
sure,
provide speakers. We worked with all the different associations, national associations, state associations, providing them. And it was just, I would call and reach out to different experts that were OSAP members, because I was trying to spread that out because everybody was just pulled in so many directions. And our membership just stepped up and provided some amazing training out there.
Yeah, the work you have done is amazing. And I wanted to talk a little bit about there is an oral health division of CDC.
Yes.
And OSAP is tightly partnered with the CDC. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, OSAP has partnered with CDC for many, many years, even in the beginnings of before they actually had their own division. And, it was shared with me by a former director of the CDC that, of that division, that when he first went to an OSAP meeting, he was blown away because of our membership, because our membership's not only clinicians, educators, the consultants that do the training, but it was the manufacturers and the distributors of dental infection control products. And they realized that, as they're looking at guidance and, back in the day when they were looking at dental handpieces, what can they be sterilized? They could go right to those manufacturers and say, help us understand this. Mm-hmm. And so they really relied on OSAP. And we work with them to help as they develop guidance, to give insight, and to help get their messages across. Mm-hmm. That's a big piece. And they participate with us. They speak at our annual boot camp that's every January. It's a very 3-day foundational infection control training. It's foundational, but it is intense. I mean, it's like 7:30 to 5:30. It is incredible. And we have many of the CDC experts who come in from various areas of CDC, not just Division of Oral Health, but to talk about infection prevention. And then, of course, they're part of our annual conferences as well. So through COVID, we've worked really closely with them to help look at, FAQs coming in, helping with guidance. We do have a contract with them right now that we're working on, that one of the tasks that is required in this contract was for us to conduct 3 listening sessions so that CDC could hear from dental professionals how the interim guidance is working, where there are challenges. So as we continue to move forward, they know where adjustments might need to be made so that we're making sure we're keeping everybody safe. And so the first listening session we held was in July, and they wanted to hear from the dentist, from the practicing dentist. So we engaged 10 professional dental associations, a national dental association. So we had representatives from the American Dental Association, the National Dental Association, the Academy of General Dentistry, all of the specialists. And they sent representatives from their association. I think we had 121 people that participate in this virtual listening session, which was incredible. And then the next one we did was on public health and education. So we had representatives from the National Public Health Dental Associations and ADEA. And then the final one, they wanted to hear from the dental team members. So we engaged ADHA, ADAA, ADOM. So we had the hygienists, the assistants, the office managers, so that, again, CDC could hear from them. And then from all of that, OSAP will be presenting recommended changes that might need to be made to the guidance to the CDC. So it's an ongoing, we'll be doing some webinars. Those are going to be coming up in the near future. That's also part of that contract. But it's, very exciting.
Such important work. I can't state your mission exactly word for word, but I think I can summarize it by saying that your mission is to keep dentistry safe.
Yeah, it's that every dental visit is a safe visit.
Okay, there you go. So my question to you is, how do you feel OSAP is doing in accomplishing that mission?
Oh, the fact that we're not hearing stories of widespread COVID because of going to the dental office tells you a lot. What we're doing is working. The changes with PPE, all of it has made a difference. That's clear. You're not hearing those stories. If there is, it's, the few little things that I've heard out there is usually, because someone went to a family event over the weekend and they've gotten COVID that way, not from working on our patients. So that's a great success.
I totally agree.
And I don't think we're ever going to have to shut dentistry down again because we're doing the right things.
I agree with you. And we'll never get, it'll never be perfect. And of course, at a micro level, any problem is a very serious problem, but you have to look at dentistry as it is with 150,000 dentists. I mean, if there's 1 or 2 problems a year, that's normal. It's not okay when you know the people, but statistically, if we can keep that number as small as possible with all the precautions that you're teaching us, that keeps dentistry safe. Obviously, we don't rest until it's guaranteed 0, but overall, I totally agree with you. We're doing really, really well. So I'd like to shift gears a little bit and ask you a couple of questions that I like to ask the guests. So they're non-dental, but just have a good time with them. And I'm curious to hear, if you could, what message would you put out on a billboard, dental or not dental, that you can get across to the world? It'd be on a 10-lane highway.
Oh my gosh. Never let anybody tell you that you can't do something.
Oh, I love it. Okay, great. And then secondly, what books do you typically give as gifts? Are there any books that you have given frequently, more than to a couple of people, as gifts?
There's a business writer, Patrick Lenciani, who he writes these great business books, but they're written like fables. So they're really easy to understand. And there's several of those that I have given to people. And, one of them, and I never can remember, this is terrible. I can't remember which book this comes from, this message, but it was a great lesson that I learned many years ago now, from one of his books. And it's about, when you hire somebody, you want to hire somebody who's humble, hungry, and smart. Mm. And so they're humble, that they're coachable, right? They're hungry, that they need the job either because they need the paycheck or they have a drive for a challenge. And they're smart. They understand and they can read people. And whenever something hasn't worked out with a team member, for me, I could always go back and say, I missed that in the interview. Mm-hmm. They were missing one of those things.
That sounds like a great book.
Yeah, it's awesome. But I love those books.
Love it. Next question. What frustrates you in the world today?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot, unfortunately. I don't understand why we can't all get along. That's what I've just always, since I was very young, I just appreciated the differences we all bring.
And these days you can't even talk about it.
And you can't talk about it. Yeah.
Yep.
It's really frightening that. And I mean, we're still fighting that, of course. And
I think we're fighting it, and I think it's getting worse. I think that there are topics and discussions that can't be had. Mm-hmm. And that is, I was always brought up with the thinking that that's what America is so great about. You can talk about anything. You can't do it.
We're a melting pot, right? It's just, yeah.
You should be able to talk. I mean, whichever side of the political line you're on, you should be able to have, normal discourse and conversation with your friends or your non-friends or whatever. And at the end of the conversation, everybody should be happy to have had the conversation. Mm-hmm. But these days, it's hard to even, people don't bring stuff up. Everybody's kind of afraid of how the other feels. It's complicated. So mm-hmm. I that resonated with me, the way what you just said. Next question. What podcasts do you listen to? What are you streaming on Netflix or Amazon? Give us some tips.
Okay, so one of the podcasts I do love to listen to is Katie Couric's podcast. So I just, that's the old journalist in me.
I didn't even know she had a podcast. That's great.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. And she's reinvented the podcast over time, but there's a lot of dental podcasts that I listen to. OSAP has a podcast, and we got started because of A Tale of Two Hygienists, Michelle Strange and Andrew Johnston. And
I love that podcast. That's a great podcast. I agree.
They started the Dental Podcast Network, in which was a group of 10 different podcasts on 2 channels. And they came to me and offered OSAP to have one of those podcasts. And we have now broken off of those channels and have our own channel, along, of course, still supported by them. And so all of those dental podcasts are amazing on the Dental Podcast Network. So I'm a runner. So if I run by myself and not with my group, that's what I do. I listen to podcasts.
I listen to a lot of podcasts too. And one of my favorites is, first of all, Tale of Two Hygienists. And another one is the OSAP podcast. And if you weren't going to mention it, I was going to mention it at the end, which is unfortunately now, but I will say that a couple of things. First is, don't miss the OSAP podcast. It's wonderful. Regular episodes. You're going to love it. Also, don't miss the Dental Infection Control Boot Camp for 2021. That's in January 2021.
Yes.
As you mentioned, it's one of the most important meetings that OSAP puts on. And if you have
it will be virtual.
And it'll be virtual this year.
Yes,
and
so
don't miss. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And OSAP also does an annual meeting. I was a part of it this year. I did one of the keynote speeches. I loved it, and that's you had thousands of attendees. So don't miss that coming up. And also I noticed on the website you're also selling luggage grips. So was that your idea?
Remind people to wash their hands, and we had that pre-COVID. How about that?
These are Velcro. They're made out of wetsuit material, and there's a message on there: wash your hands. And I tell you, that resonates with me because I travel a lot, and I'm a true germaphobe. So I want everyone in the world to get those luggage grips because when you travel, that's when your hands are most dirty. But all of that being said, Michelle, it's been such a pleasure and such an honor to have you on our podcast. Thank you so much for spending time with us. And thank you most of all for all of the amazing work that OSAP is doing. OSAP has done pre-COVID, but especially now that we're in these troubled times with COVID, the work that OSAP is doing is
I am just so thankful that I work with so many amazing people. We have so many passionate, committed members who really, they're the ones who you should be talking to because they're the ones really making the difference out there. I just like to talk about them a lot. Never.
Oh. I can understand why. Well, Michelle, have a great rest of the day. Thanks once again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.